Hello everyone, how's it going? Just a quick question before we start the video. How do you feel about the Supreme Court? It's a vaunted and prestigious office with a unique history of interesting decisions that makes discussing it a little bit difficult sometimes. All the difficulty aside though, there is one thing I can certainly say I know about it. I know it's okay with the murder of innocent Americans. As of May 23rd, when I learned about this, the Supreme Court made one of the worst decisions of its history. I'd say the worst, but they've really been trying to outdo themselves lately. Today we'll be discussing the case of Barry Lee Jones, who was convicted of the sexual abuse and murder of a 4-year-old child in the brief period that they were alone with one another. The evidence for this case was pretty bad and outright flimsy. It relied on the eyewitness accounts of two small children, the testification of a unqualified and overzealous police officer that did an unregulated and totally private medical examination of the child, and an incredibly abusive and downright hideous interrogation session. Any competent lawyer should have been able to throw this out and prove that Barry Lee Jones at the very least had a shred of reasonable doubt and innocence. What did his lawyer do, though? It's absolutely astounding that this lawyer passed the bar, and it's absolutely astounding that they didn't have any sort of credibility revoked immediately after this case was finished, considering how they failed to point out how the lead detective failed to investigate how or when the child is injured. They failed to call upon a medical expert to talk about how there was no medical investigation as into how the poor child had died, and he failed to call upon a pathologist that would challenge the state's timetable as to how the child had died, given that the consensus was pretty clear that it was practically impossible for the child to die of those injuries in that time frame, especially if Barry had inflicted them. He also failed to point out that the prosecution refused to consider any other suspects in a park that they lived in that was filled with sexual abusers and convicted criminals, or how the mother had been abusive to the child and how her brother had also been sexually abusive. It's astounding how many layers of incompetence that you had to go through to get to this trial, and I am assured that Barry Lee Jones is probably one of the most unlucky human beings in the world, just to have met this lawyer at this time. Barry would be unjustly sentenced to death. Though he would attempt to appeal it in a state court proceeding, he would again be met with the death penalty. Though this was not without flaw either, as Justice Sonia would call it, another egregious failure of counsel. Clearly, Barry is seriously the most unlucky man on the planet. By this point, Supreme Court precedent should have taken over, and in the decisions of Martinez v. Ryan and Trevino v. Thaler, Barry should have been given another new trial, with competent legal representation. The state of Arizona would disagree, however, and they would appeal this decision to the Supreme Court, where six of the 9 Supreme Court justices would vote in favor of the murder of an innocent man. Clarence Thomas, who wrote the majority opinion, would justify the murder of an innocent man by saying that the court may not conduct an evidentiary hearing or otherwise consider evidence beyond the state court record based on the ineffective assistance of state post-conviction counsel, or that it would impose significant costs to handle the failures and screw-ups of the court system, or damage the state's sovereign power to enforce societal norms through criminal law. What does all that legal speak mean for you and I, common, normal people that have morals? It means that when push comes to shove, the Supreme Court really doesn't give a shit about whether you're going to die or not. The Supreme Court chose convenience and comfort and the relatively abstract idea of stepping on the state's toes over saving the life of an innocent man. It's ridiculous and disgusting that when you have evidence proving your innocence, the Supreme Court can simply let you die because it would be too stressful to do anything else, like lift a finger. I don't know, it's incredibly horrific that in a fair, free, and democratic society, we can have decisions like this happen, and happen in so quick of a time span. I mean, look at Roe v. Wade right now. It's being gutted, and what, an innocent man has to die? A fetus has a greater right to life than a man who has spent 35 years paying taxes. They had a choice between the safety and life of an innocent man, and they did not care. They simply do not care. Out of all the choices they could have made that would have guaranteed the freedom of a man without compromising states' rights, whatever they wanted to use to justify this horrific act of degeneracy, they could not come up with a reasonable answer because they just don't care. Out of all the possible responses they could have made, they chose to talk about the convenience of the court system, because when push comes to shove, they really don't care about what you or I think. They care about making things nice and convenient for a system that has damned an innocent man to death. It's cold, callous murder, and nothing but that. Stuff like this shows that you really have to stay involved in politics, because if you don't, well, congratulations. Several Republican Supreme Court judges have been appointed, and now people are being executed, even though they're pretty clearly innocent. It's sad and disgusting, and we have to do our best to prevent things like this from happening, and regardless of how you feel about the electoral system or the virtues of participating in a liberal capitalist democracy, you have to stay involved. All right, whew, that was a little bit of a doozy. Thank you for making it to the end of the video. Please consider liking and subscribing. I know you don't like e-begging, and I really don't enjoy it either, but it's necessary to grow our channel, and I really do appreciate any and all support. A huge thanks to the first ever Bloodborne streamer, Vosh. I got a lot of my information from his American Truck Simulator stream where he went over it. And I think, I probably wouldn't have gotten as far in the video as I did without a lot of the information that he went over in the video. So, like a shout out's necessary. You gotta help out the little guys. I'm pretty sure that's it. You have a wonderful day, and stick around maybe because I've got a lot of stuff in the pipeline, and I would love to grow this channel a lot. You have a wonderful day because I sure as hell will. Goodbye.